Hello everybody and welcome to episode 32 of the Bao Podcast. For this episode we invited a familiar face. For the people who've been listening to this podcast for a long time, you'll probably remember her. Today we invited Sunita Van Heers for a second episode. Sunita is the founder and managing director of SuReal. SuReal is a consultancy firm that supports companies and government agencies in making buildings, city projects, and their companies more sustainable. Through a multitude of services such as studies, certification and project guidance in multiple fields such as ESG, water, energy waste, ecology, legislation and so on, they guarantee an integrated and sustainable result. All this with one aim, having an impact on society. Welcome Sunita, I'm happy you're back. How are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
All right, that's good to hear. As I mentioned in the introduction, it's been a couple of years since you were here, and I was wondering, how has it been going for SuReal? I think when you were here the first time, we were in the middle of the COVID crisis, so maybe a good place to start is to explain a little bit to the audience what the biggest lessons were for you now in this post-COVID period, and did a lot of things change since the last time you were here, I would say 2.5 years ago.
Indeed. In the beginning, or the first time that I was here, it was still the start of, it was still the starting period of SuReal. So during COVID, we were like, indeed, not even 10 people. And now we're with around 30 people. We have a thriving office in Brussels, very well known in Belgium, and we opened our first office abroad in Italy. So for SuReal, it has been going quite amazingly. Of course, also thanks to the real estate market that has also changed a lot more towards ESG. ESG is now implemented within every company, or it needs to be implemented. So we have a good audience, let's say. The main lessons that we learned from COVID is actually COVID helped us structure. Because of course, actually we even hired some people who we never actually seen in real life, and we had to deliver their laptops to their home. And then the first time that we would meet was in front of Teams. But it also, we implemented the rule that everybody should be replaceable at any time. For indeed, if someone would get COVID, you would need to be replaceable. So even until now, we have a project manager, but we always have a second project manager who is aware of everything, or should be aware of everything. Also, let's say is the ideal, and therefore you have the opportunity to also from time to time say, I'm sick and I can't be sick at home, and there's someone who will take it over. So we really worked, this structure enhances the well-being of everybody in the company, because just the mental load taking it off, okay, there is somebody who can take over, really helps. And the structuring also helps, of course, towards growing for the company and for our clients. So for us, that's the main lesson that we have taken. From our client sides, from the real estate sector, it really was a push towards understanding our need to be more close to nature, and integrating more nature into our projects, or real estates, and having a more focus on the well-being.
Can you say a little bit more about the need to be in touch with nature and how you are implementing this in the different projects?
So there's it's really the definition of the contact with nature is biophilia, and that is the connection with nature that you have. For example, here you have plants, you even have wood. So we actually lost completely our contact with nature, and it has an impact on our human body, and on our even on our productivity, on our happiness level. So especially they did that research mainly for offices, and there they've noticed whenever you had more biophilia in the office, people were more productive, were more efficient, were happier, because it's actually the elements, what happens in your brain to get this connection that triggers that. And it's by having outside more nature, but even natural patterns help. For example, if that wall would not be white, but would have natural patterns reflecting a tree or water, that actually helps soothe the mind actually a bit. And that's really the biophilia. And that is something that we incorporate in our in projects, not only offices, but also master planning, to really make sure that from different angles you have that contact. But in a broader way, it helped us realize more the need for sustainability in overall. And that is also that connection to nature is the need for a more sustainable way of also taking care more of our planet and of our nature, and having that link.
Okay. And so you said you try to make everyone replaceable.
Yes.
If I think about how that would work in our organization, it sounds great, but isn't it very difficult in practice? Because no one can always be on top of his own projects and then on the top of the projects of like that person he or she needs to replace when they would fall out, no?
Yeah, in theory, it sounds very easy, but in practice, it's not that easy. But we still strive for that. So we have, so for every project, there is always the first and then the second. It's not only to be replaceable, but it also helps with knowledge. For example, there would be a senior project manager and a junior junior can learn from the senior. Or there's the first PM is a junior, and then the second PM is a senior. Then just looking over his or her shoulder to help where needed. But it's very difficult to help when you're not aware of elements. And even you don't need to follow every little detail, but at least when you're in copy also of emails, or if you have been receiving meeting reports, have been going to some of the meetings, you know the client and you can look up, okay, this is what happens. And then also in terms of competence, because we have a lot of different competences. Every domain of sustainability, water, ecology, materials, etc. We have one expert at least, and then we also need to have a second and a third and a fourth understanding this and knowing this. So for when that person falls out, somebody else can take over. And then also in the naming of the files, everything is it all needs to be the same, where we save a document. So the idea is that you do everything with the idea that tomorrow somebody else can take over my project. Mm-hmm. It's not only when you fall sick, it's when you travel, it's when there are changes and someone else will take over the project, we're switching. And that helps our organization to grow, but also the people internally to learn more.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. You also mentioned when 2.5 years ago you were with 10, today we are with 30, and so there's been a quite rapid growth. And is it mostly to do with the extra interest in ESG from the market, or have you also switched the offering that you do towards the market?
Both, indeed, very much both. There has been an increase in demand for pragmatical sustainability, because that's really what we do. We don't just sell blah blah, but it's really like in practice, what can you do then actually? And there has been an increase of demand towards different factors. Lately, in the last year, actually, I would say the legislation, the European legislation from Green Deal and everything to do with CSRD, we can dig a little bit more deeper afterwards, that really has made a gigantic push towards even more demand. But at the same time, also because we actually, since 2020, the end of 2023, we hit a crisis in the real estate sector. So also from our side, there were less developments. But we have a gigantic standing assets portfolio. And those existing buildings also need more guidance. So from our side, we also switched a lot more to having a focus on the existing buildings and what we can help clients there into analyzing. So it has been the last year, it has been more focused on very thoroughly analyzing, putting CapEx plannings on it, practical plannings on it, so that implementations can go when there is again more happening.
Mm-hmm. Can you say a little bit more about the European environmental legislation that you just mentioned?
Yes. So everything happens from the Green Deal. And how I always explain it in very simple ways, it's actually that, so Europe said, okay, the 1.5 degrees from the Paris Agreement, we need to go towards it, and we're not reaching it. Now we're going more towards 3 or etc. So we need to change actually legislation so that we really can reach that 1.5 and reach our goals of being carbon neutral in 2050 and minus 55% in 2030, because we're way off. But at the same time, also there is a lot of money existing that is supposed to go towards this green or the sustainable transition, but is not going to the right causes. Because actually now it was quite easy to say, I'm being sustainable, I'm being green, give me money. And so therefore they said, okay, but we really need to define the framework. And in this sustainable framework, it's not only about energy, it's also about biodiversity, about circular economy, about pollution. That is in this definition. And we need to finance this green transition, and we need to leave no one behind. That is actually the basics. And then following on that, there was this waterfall of new directives on European level that at the same time every time had to be translated into the regional or national legislation. For example, in Belgium, there are new laws with regard to biodiversity, new laws with regard to energy. But then very much the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainable Reporting Directive, is on European level, and that obliges bigger companies, for now it's really the bigger companies, to have a very, very transparent ESG reporting. So all the stock-listed companies had to do it this year, on the last year. So every company needs to report through a standardized list on their finances.
It's already from this year?
It's already from this year.
Okay.
Yeah, and now we have to report on a very standard list on ESG. So to take away this greenwashing.
Okay. And how do you look at the fact that, if I understood correctly from the latest time I saw the statistics pass by, Europe is only 7% of the total CO2 emissions. And we are going really far, which I personally also am a big proponent of, but you do start to notice, I think, that not everyone in the European population is so much in favor of this.
Yes.
And I start to notice there's like a tension between, as Europe from a legislative perspective, we want to go first in class and we want to do it the best possible way, and we want to give the best example globally for how ambitious we can be. But at the same time, we're only 7%. And I also start to notice that there is maybe a conflict with, if you put everything so tightly regulated, then growth also goes down. And then maybe even the 7% is also going to be even less by the time we're 2050. So I don't know, how do you look at this? You start to notice this tension, no?
Yes.
I mean,
indeed.
I start to notice it in the discussion online and with people. And
yes, indeed. It's I think it's also due to the fact that we are, especially in the real estate sector again, in a crisis situation. So in every crisis, of course, there's not a lot of money. And now we're going really, really fast with all these new legislations and this push towards ESG. Where at the same time, there are really companies struggling. There are private owners, homeowners that are struggling already. So then, having this big ESG, gigantic bubble over our head. What I always say is, it's also something more philosophical. Do you yourself take your responsibility or not? And for me, it is, as a person in this society and as a company, you need to take your own responsibility. You cannot just say, okay, we're only 7%, so I'm not going to do anything, and first China needs to start doing something. If everybody works in that way, well, our planet will go dead. And at the same time, it's not that it's only we having that 7%, it's we are already feeling the impact of climate change. So even if you don't look at the big numbers and at the theoretical elements, we're already feeling it now. So there are already elements that we can do now, which actually have a benefit. It's not only about saving the planet. It's really, like I said, it's about this contact with nature. It is having less energy costs. It is being more adapted for heat waves, for drafts. It is actually also taking into account everything what happens and solving your own issues. And at a second level, what we are doing now, or what is happening now, is also looking at the value chain. So this also, in this new legislation, CSRD, you need to look at your value chain and you need to map and calculate your value chain, which makes it better to buy something made in Europe or made in Belgium instead of buying something in China. And therefore, with this waterfall of the value chain, we do not only have an impact in Belgium, but also abroad. With us saying, I will only buy something with these and these and these elements. I will only go in a contract with a company that has high ESG standards. We are also having an impact on the rest of the world. So it is further than that. Our impact sphere is bigger than the 7%. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we're having already an influence because this European taxonomy that we're having is, for example, Singapore is also looking to adopting this the same approach. So we're not the only ones who are doing something.
Mm-hmm. No. I mean, again, I approve with the method, but I'm slightly worried how it, for example, now in June, with the European elections that are coming up, I feel what the result is going to be, because like this legislation, can it be turned back? Is there if for example, Europe goes very, very right political wise, as we already start to see happening? Is there a chance that 2 years from now the European Union is going to say, with new politicians there, like, okay, we're gonna slow down? Is that an option?
I'm not the best in politics, but
I don't know.
Yeah, no, but if
you don't know, it's also okay. Yeah? I'm just thinking out loud.
No, definitely. The thing is, what is happening now, it is not what the shift that we have now is making it transparent. So it is not an obligation per se for every company to already now be completely zero carbon free. That's not what it is. It is being transparent. It is making sure that the money, that the investments goes to the right place. But of course, we have already signed agreements towards this end goal of 2030 and 2050, and that's signed. So every member state should still show progress towards that. And of course, there are member states who are not actually doing it. But all these European laws or decrees that weren't into place are now being translated into the different companies, into the different member states. What is still not clear is what are the tools and what is the fastness in how we will get there. If you have let's take an example. With regard to carbon emissions, we also have the carbon emissions in the materials, the embodied carbon. Until now, there was not until 4 or 5 years ago, no member state had any regulations with that. Now we have 6 or 7 European member states that already have a maximum with regard to that. The same as we have with an energy level, we have the same as with a maximum amount of carbon in materials that we can use. France has adopted it. And they say, okay, now you need to just start measuring it, and this is the maximum, but the maximum is very high still. And then they will always go down slowly per year. But the member states who are not doing anything now, well, they will need to do something drastically in year 2029. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I think the politicians, or if they take a step back, they will just make it more complicated for the legislation afterwards. So it is indeed a possibility that some member states will have a withdrawal or will put the subsidies in the wrong way, therefore making it more complex indeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds logical. A great example that I heard recently about how the European legislation can also have a global impact is about the energy labels on appliances.
Yes.
I don't know if you know Rutger Bregman, the Dutch philosopher. He has a podcast, the Rudy and Freddy Show, which is really good. So it's himself and a good friend of him, Jesse Bregman, who is this really... it's like this data-driven journalist who can focus for like 4 weeks on a topic and then they record a podcast about it. Like this week they posted one about nuclear energy and he just explains very clearly a very complicated subject. Okay. And a couple of years ago they made like an episode with a Dutch European politician, like a really high-level European politician who makes all these legislations about products. And he explained that because of the energy labels on kitchen appliances, for example, that the European legislation put forward, or vacuum cleaners, they also did something with vacuum cleaners, that because Europe is such a big market today in purchasing power, if they put it on the manufacturers to say, look, your vacuum cleaner needs to be reduced energy usage by 50% in 10 years, they're not going to make a separate one for the European market and one for all the other markets. They just make their products 50% more energy efficient. Yeah. And I thought that was a very clear explanation about how an impact of a European legislation can have a ripple effect across the world.
Definitely.
It's interesting. So, and maybe if you were explaining about the existing building infrastructure, what's like, if people are listening now and they have a certain size building and they are not working on any new projects for now because, as you say, a little bit difficult currently. What are some good examples of what people can do to really drastically lower the environmental or ESG impact of an existing building?
Yep. It really depends on what kind of typology, of course, and the size of it. The first step is indeed really already understand what the building or the buildings are doing, the real performance. Because a lot of the time we actually don't have that much data. Belgium is not really data-driven compared to other countries. So this year has been a lot of getting all the correct information on what is now my actual energy, my final energy consumption, my primary energy consumption, my water consumption, my waste consumption. What is actually the level of well-being, of comfort in my building? What am I offering towards, if it's tenants? What is my biodiversity level? So it's first analyzing and understanding and going further than just the energy consumption. And then looking at, okay, you can even benchmark it. What is a typical, you can benchmark it towards last year, or you can even see, okay, but in these months, water consumption has gone up, waste, or compare between the different buildings that you have in your portfolio. That one is like 100 times more than the others. How come? And already going into depth about the analysis, understanding also, okay, but my building, when did I do last renovations? Do I have, for example, a very easy example is leak detection. Leak detection on your water appliances. It does not cost a lot. You can install it, and leaks are very easily detected. And we have several examples where there were already very large savings in water and also costs, of course, because it's also cost linked. And going into a conversation with the tenants, going into a conversation with the surrounding. You can even do that digitally, and not everything needs to be manually. Ask them, and then after you have that analysis, also at the same time analyze. But what does ESG and sustainability mean for me? Because for every company it's different. You might want to put the focus on embodied carbon, on having local suppliers, on having water savings. Others might have it more on biodiversity. What is my impact? And then you need to align both, and then you can have an action plan. But the action plan also needs to be pragmatic. And typically, the first thing is to look at the installations. That's the installations and your envelope. What is my envelope performing? For example, if you don't even have a roof insulation, already a roof insulation. If, for example, my roof is a black roof, really radiating, and you're in the city center, insulate your roof and make sure that it's a white, so that your effect on heat island effect is lowered. Easy elements. Is my building in a flooding zone? Okay, that's also something you can see. Was it already flooded? Where was it flooded? Where is the risk of being flooded? Can I then install something so that the water is first retained, and then... So there are some quick wins in it. Do I have a cycling space? Is there electric and charging for cycling spaces? Is it easily accessible? Are people really complaining about the temperature? And is this constantly? So the first step, is to understand.
Mm-hmm. And then when you do such an analysis, it's you get an entry part, and then it says, for this investment, this amount of carbon can be emitted.
Yes.
That's the how do you say it? The KPI where you focus most on. Or is there also a thing that says, if you do these investments in this amount of years, you have it paid back?
So it's both. So first it's really looking at the ES and the G, so not only the carbon, is on over every topic, and then see if you would do this change, how much capex would it cost, and what would be your total cost of ownership. So indeed, what is then actually your payback period, and what impact does it have on society? It can be an absolute figure like carbon savings, but it can also be a qualitative. It will increase the biophilia level of the people working there. It will increase satisfaction level. So it also has other elements. So therefore, also your ESG rating in a very clear way that comes out of it. Because if you only focus on the elements with regard to cost and carbon, we will leave certain things out. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, what is the payback period of having good bicycle parking? It's a tricky one.
Yeah, it's true.
Or biophilia. What is I can calculate how much it costs to put a tree outside or to have natural patterns, but what do I get in return? It's sometimes not that easily...
No, you could say if it's a big tree, it gives shade to the building and it's cooling and so on, but... no, it gets tricky, I can imagine.
Yeah, to measure it. Yeah.
And then maybe when I take the perspective from a client, right? You give this report, and then at the end, is there also like, all right, now if you want to start with proposal A, which is the highest price and benefit-wise, or the green premium, I think, as Bill Gates calls it. Do you also have like a list of partners that you work together with to implement those things?
So we one of our core values is the independence. So we are never linked to someone, so that we can always offer the best possible advice. But we do, of course, advise some parties. So, but that's from a completely independent point of view, that we know those companies offer something that is and locally sourced, has a low embodied carbon. We have done projects with them. The follow-up is good. So we do indeed advise on good. It's like when you ask your friends, do you know a good doctor?
Yeah.
It's more in that way that you can then give a good advice, but we don't couple ourselves to other parties to stay.
It's not that you're a marketplace between demand and supply. No.
Because in that way we could not keep our independence level, and therefore also if new companies arrive in the market with a good proposal, they should also be included in the option. And especially not every client. Some clients want to go for let's call it the cheapest option, and some want to go for more the quality, good follow-up, local. So it also depends on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine. So if you look at what's coming in the next couple of years, are there some certain technologies that you are quite excited about that are going to be more present, or that are going to have a big improvement that you foresee to have a big impact on these many challenges that we're talking about?
Well, I think also what you guys are doing, it's because the challenge what we have now is renovating en masse. Because when we do our analysis on all of those, we have now, I don't know how much, I think 10 million square meters under assessments of existing buildings. And that's just really a small part of actually the existing building stock. And all of those buildings need renovating to arrive to the targets that we will need to comply with. So whenever we do our analysis, okay, money is one element, but there are ways of funding. But to actually being able to do all of these projects in a standard way, I don't think that's going to be possible. We will need to have more integrated, standardized, fast ways of renovating our existing building stocks.
Yeah, I can only say I wholeheartedly agree.
Again, completely independent.
We're noticing it now. We're doing a project in Brussels on the Steenkoolkaai with ERP, the Eon Residential platform, and it's a building, quite an old building. I don't know how old, but it stood empty for a couple of years. It's now getting renovated to become urban studios, and it's more complex. Even with a standardized solution as ours, we have needed to put a whole lot of extra time into getting it all fit nicely in an old renovation project. It's 36 rooms. There are 6 different layouts in those 36 rooms, and then with our standardized elements we can try and find as much overlap as possible between those 36 different units. But even within those 36, it's a big complex puzzle with also because we've manufactured everything off-site, right? It all gets digitally designed and manufactured and then delivered, and but it's complex. I think we can help, and I do think we have a solution that's definitely steps ahead of what's traditional today. But those projects are not easy.
No. And that's the challenge.
It's a big challenge because if you do new builds, it's a completely different story. Like your air margins in a new build. For we did a project with Urbicon on 2 years ago on also in Brussels. It's 2 or 3 centimeters, right? Max. But in renovation,
Yeah.
it can go to 5, 6. And then we have a material wood that enables that we can do some small adjustments on site, but then you lose time. And then, so
it's a challenge.
It's a challenge. It needs to happen, because if you would tear them all down and build them new, it's...
No. That's also a no-go. That's not the solution that we will have. But the first step is indeed some of our building stock they cannot be in a cost-efficiently and environmentally efficiently way renovated. So some do need to be torn down. Or keep the parking, or keep the structure, or but take away the facade, etc. So every building should be analyzed in that way, but also combining. Actually, what we need to also do is, ideally, we stop being so individually and go on a larger scale. So let's say, for example, a typical verkaveling. Met rijwoningen. If every owner at their own pace, at their own time, starts to renovate their envelope, but that's not efficient. Ideally, we really start at a higher scope and say, okay, now we're going to do this street, then we're going to do this street. It saves people time, their money as well, because we have an economy of scale, and we can go at a faster pace. And the same in urban areas. It's sometimes better to renovate 4 or 5 buildings altogether than to, we're going to renovate one. It brings a lot of nuisances for everybody, and then we're going to start building 2. But of course, that's on an ideal kind of way. But therefore, also Belgium it's quite tricky compared to, for example, the Netherlands. The Netherlands, they have less private ownership. It's a lot more collective, and therefore you can go at a faster pace and at a more professional level. But in Belgium, of course, we're very much a brique dans l'estomac. So it's also those kind of new ways of thinking that will need to happen.
Are there any programs getting started around these things?
There are indeed a lot of research projects happening, but there are also some companies that do offer, for example, renovations when you can still stay in the house, and that do then the envelope. And that do it indeed. They can even propose, we're going to do it for an entire street. We're going to renovate the entire facade, and it's like it's glued on it, or not glued on it, but it's attached towards it. It's kind of like a new skin over it. And there are indeed, as well as private companies, as governments, are working for more tools to help these elements, but at the same time, it's also going quite slow. So we need to pick up the pace. But what and that's also what we are working on, is also we call it knowledge sharing, because everything with regard to sustainability, it's very complex. It is very, like you say, every existing building is different, and there are so many technologies that you can use. Let's take, for example, bio-based materials. We're a huge fan of bio-based materials. And keeping your existing facade, but in terms of insulation, you cannot use every insulation material. It needs to be vapor open. It needs to have a certain thickness, and you cannot make any damage to the existing stone. So sometimes we also see a lot of investments going to actually wrong installations, and then ending up damaging it, or not having the correct outcome, like having a mold and not a good interior quality, or actually the existing facades breaking. So therefore we invest a lot in knowledge sharing, making everybody understand how it works, what should we do, and government agencies also were also helping with that. So that's and this helps, these podcasts.
Yeah, we try. Are there some maybe really circular leaders that you got to know in the last couple of years that are maybe not well known enough in Flanders, or like some companies or like some solutions that you really think about that you are implementing often or advising to implement often in different projects, but that are not really well known? If that's not the case, it's also okay. It's just
there's a lot of, especially about circular economy. There's so many parties and solutions that are not well known. Now, I don't know the names of every company. Actually, I do know like solutions like Draai Shop.
Right.
You have a lot of different solutions in there. A very good solution for also renovation processes and also to reduce the carbon emissions. There's one party where we are working quite a lot with. Is, for example, Sonian Wood. They're based in Brussels, and actually what they wanted to do is so you have the Sonian forest, and actually around 80% gets shipped to China. They make toothpicks out of it, and it gets shipped back.
Wait.
Yeah.
Trees get cut in the.
It's not necessarily cut. It's the rest of the wood, because also a forest it lives. So you have trees that fall down, trees that are sick. So in actually an existing forest, you have a rest wood that then gets sold to make other things, and then that supply chain was actually being bought up by China, making toothpicks and then coming back to us. So complete disaster. And they wanted to, good God. And you have so many examples of that. It's really not not a local market, let's say. And they wanted to cut that. So they are buying now it's rest wood of the forest. And they're buying it, and then they're making materials out of it in their Brussels depot. So a very short link. It is getting the wood in Brussels, remaking it in Brussels, and then selling it again in Belgium. For example, our offices, we made all of our furniture, and the carpet is by them. And it's also very manually made. And that's a great example. It's only one solution, of course. It's only wooden parquet or furniture designed like you want. So it's not en masse that you can use it. Then we also work with Uno, for example, at the circular walls. But you have also companies like pt.2 that actually go to the sites, see. Also, we do that together with them. What can we recuperate? And they store it as well, because we need the same manufacturers of new materials or circular materials. We need to also store existing ones, and then clean and then upcycle of those elements.
Yeah, we know pt.2. In a couple of weeks, we're launching like the new catalog for this year of SAM. So that's all different finishing options. And we're also going to put an option there. So our customers have the option to choose from our standard Upgrade Plus level of finishing for their toilets, for example, which are new toilet seats. But they also have the option to go for the circular one. Perfect. And that would be from pt.2. So they are, but it's difficult because we are in a sales process with a developer. We have a contract, and then they choose their options. Yeah. And they go through the option list, and they see, that's something that we're discussing currently in the office. They see the circular solution, and they say, which type of toilet seat, which type of toilet is it? And we need to say, we don't know, because it depends on what pt.2 has found in the existing infrastructure. Okay. So then, we already need to give them a significant enough financial incentive to take the uncertainty of not knowing how their toilet is going to look like. Those kind of things will need to happen, but take some time to figure out the new business models behind it. I think, and the uncertainty.
And now we're still at that moment that we don't have enough existing stock, or we don't have enough materials, because if we have more materials that are being recuperated by pt.2 likes, we have more choices, and we have the possibility of more ensuring, okay, we will have of this kind of typology, we will have we will have them. And that is still a process that needs to happen. The more that we can put things on the reuse market, the more offer, then we can align offer and demand. Because now the offer and demand are not aligned yet. So it's still a work in progress that we have there indeed. Also with furniture, even indeed, we also use a Relief website. They are a professional reuse of furniture, office furniture typically. And there, also you need to see what they have. It's in batches, but they have already quite a lot of proposals so that you can go looking for it. But yeah, we have the same kind of conversations. With the developers, because especially it's a long-term process. So even we can say, let's make, but we do have some solutions. For example, we're having a project now where we want to aesthetically it needs to be bricks, or architects decided we want to have bricks, and then we design it that way that a part of the building can be new bricks. But then also a part of the rest can be recuperated bricks, and they can be in different colors, because it's already integrated into design from the start that we play with different kind of colors of bricks, so that once we are at the moment that we're going to construct, it's okay if we need to source from different kind of sites, and then it matches actually what we want to do. So there are some solutions to give that agreement on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but indeed, it needs often, if you want to do it as good as possible, it needs to be implemented very early in the decision-making process.
Yep.
Like it's a shift in the way of working that developers are used to, because normally the selection of the kitchen, for example, or bathroom, or that happens way later in the process. But if you want to use something like what we offer, it needs to be implemented from the very beginning, because it also determines the layout of the
Exactly. And that is what we also, one of our objectives is to change the value change in the real estate sector. So what we do now is we're having now a current project of about 40,000 square meters. And we actually convinced them to not demolish the building, because we were going to do an up-topping of 7 floors. And so everybody was like, okay, up-topping of 7 floors, impossible to reuse the existing structure. So we're just going to demolish it. But then it's very, very in the process. I said, I don't think it's a good idea to demolish. It's even going to be tricky with the legislation. So why don't we really do why don't we just analyze it? And then the structural engineer did one analysis, didn't take that long. He said, actually, we can reuse the existing structure by just reinforcing it at some points, and we can do an up-topping of 7 floors. So we kept the existing structure completely. We're just going to redo the facade. So that was already a very big win in terms of carbon. But now, even before the entire layout and everything is ready, we did a reuse inventory where we always focus on the biggest wins in carbon. So indeed, we can go to, we can reuse that lighting feature or those elements. But really, the most intensive in carbon, let's focus on those. And then validate with the entire team an objective of reuse in situ, percentage, reuse ex situ, and total carbon emissions of the project. And that way you have them in the beginning, you let something be validated, but it is in the first process. Mm-hmm. And therefore, solutions like yourself can be already implemented in the very start. But it's indeed a complete mind shift.
That's a great example. It's cool.
Yeah, I was happy that day. I went home and I was like, yes, I did something good today.
Made some impact.
Yeah.
All right. Sunita, we are approaching the end again of this second conversation. But maybe before we we ask some more personal questions, as we are in the habit of doing at the end. I was also wondering, can you explain a little bit more about the logic behind moving to Italy? Because you guys opened a second office in Milan, if I'm correct, even
Yes.
opposite of isn't it opposite of the well-known building?
We did the party there, but the office is closer to the Duomo. Yeah.
Also, about that building, isn't it? I heard that it's a bit like under scrutiny in the sense that we also used it for our commercial, for our some marketing visuals, but recently I heard that it's actually not so sustainable as everyone thinks it is, because the amount of materials that were needed to be used to put those trees on the facade were actually way more polluting than the amount of carbon that the tree is gonna capture.
So it's indeed a big decision. But what I always also say is hoge bomen vangen veel wind. I don't know how to say it in English. So it's easy to make criticism about this project. Now, what is very important, the building has been standing there already 10 years. So the concept of it was actually 15 years ago. So we need to go back in time towards 15 years ago. We also need to compare apples with apples there. And the main issue in Milan is air quality. It's actually one of the most polluted areas in Europe because of the position of the mountains and etc. So their focus, actually, it was also before we started measuring embodied carbon, etc. Their focus was really, we want to make something that makes cities breathable and livable. That's the focus point. And therefore, it is seeing a residential development as a solution for the city, not only for that development as such. And indeed, the area around this tower has been significantly improved. And again, this biophilia aspect, what we were talking about, you cannot measure it. What is indeed true, to be able to put those trees there, you need to anchor them in the facade. So you do have quite a lot of concrete in the tower as such. But in every tower, you have a lot of concrete to be able to build it there. So I didn't do the actual calculations. Maybe it's a challenge indeed for our team to do that. What is the impact of, because having a tower is already better than spreading it all around. And then measuring the full operational and embodied carbon, we could indeed do that. For me, because we had also indeed Stefano Boeri with us, we're doing projects with them. His vision is very much, how can we as architects, urban planners, use our buildings as a green lung?
Stefano is the architect of the building.
Stefano Boeri is the architect of the building, yes. Okay. And that's really his mission in the entire world. He's making these kind of bosco verticales in China, in Shanghai, in Rome, in everywhere. And therefore, it's more about depolluting the towers. But then to come back to your question.
Yeah, sorry, because
no, of course, no. But it's indeed like you have and they say if we would do the bosco verticale now, we would do it differently from what they know.
Of course.
But when you're in that building and you're in those apartments, it's wonderful to see those, and especially from around it.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I would like to see it.
It's really very nice from the inside and from the outside. It changes completely. And it's used by everybody.
Everyone.
You just type in sustainability and you get the tower.
Yeah, always.
So it's even like we should give him at least the merit of changing or the way we look at buildings.
Absolutely.
So that kudos to him. And I really want to go into the calculation to be able to go more on the criticism.
I don't know it, to be clear. It's just something that I heard.
No, definitely. And we could calculate it, definitely. But to go back to Milan, why Milan? We have that question quite a lot. It's and professional and private. As an entrepreneur, I always feel you really need to love what you do. And therefore, if I need to go a lot abroad, then let's make it a country that I love going towards. I also lived in Milan, actually. I lived in Milan. I have a network there. We are several in the company that speak Italian. And we have somebody already working from Italy for SuReal from the start of SuReal. And our vision was, okay, let's go international, but let's take on projects all over the world. We are having now projects in over 12 countries in the 4 continents. And then it was, okay, let's see where we have a good market, where we like working with them, where what the knowledge is already about sustainability, what legislation is. And then we had a lot of good ongoing projects in Italy, and that was the moment to say, let's go for it. The market is there. Compared to, for example, France is quite advanced already on ESG and sustainability, and there are a lot of competitors of us. So the market is a little bit more difficult. So let's go to Milan, and then every time we can go there, we can eat nice food. People are nice. There's still work for us, and there's a need for international consultants.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I understand the logic behind if I would need to take a lot of business trips, why not Italy? Yeah, absolutely. All right, then I think that brings us to the final part of the podcast. As I already spoiled, and as everyone knows who has listened to some of our episodes, we always ask a couple of more personal questions at the very end. I don't know, now that I think about it, they probably changed. I hope they changed. Or maybe your answers have changed since the last time you were here. But if you could have a drink with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be?
I thought a lot about that question.
Okay.
And what I would like to do is, it's 2 people actually. It is, that person doesn't have a name, but I would like to talk to a Homo sapiens. Like the first, the first person who was who lived here actually in Belgium, to get that connection back to nature. What was life then? Because then it was real. It was not. It was the start of civilization, and we were more connected there. So, what was it like then? What was nature back then? And learn from that. And then the second person would be either me when I'm 85, or even one person even more in the future, like in 300 years, in 500 years. How does our world look like then, and what can we learn from that to implement now? So really seeing in history, there are so much lessons that we can take actions on, and get out of our bubble of just now, this little moment now, and see the bigger picture. Maybe we're not doing the right things now, and we need to stop maybe focusing that much on maybe even like the we already know actually the biodiversity crisis is even bigger than the carbon crisis. Maybe there are even other aspects. It's humanity, or and I learned from that. So that would be my.
It's a great answer. Yeah, it's a very original one. 50% of the time it's Elon Musk.
No, definitely not Elon Musk. No, not like that.
No, it's a very original one. Have you read *Sapiens*?
Yes, yeah.
I was very surprised when I read that book, that he explained that Homo sapiens, before the industrialization, and before we started like fixed, basically when we started agriculture, when we fixed our location, that for a couple of 100 years we were actually way worse off than before we were like how do you call it, voedselverzamelaags, more nomadic lifestyle. And that those people must have been quite like healthy and mentally better than how we were for hundreds of years after we started agriculture. I was very surprised with that. I didn't realize that. And
that's why I would like to go back to that, because actually this life of not owning a land and rather listening to nature and moving from parts to parts, it triggers me. And because agriculture is really humanly made, and why not getting a little bit more back to seeing what nature can offer us and seeing it more as our friends, the interconnection. Then, but I don't know. That's why and I also recently learned that we all have a part of Neanderthaler even in our genes. Also, amazingly interesting, I find. So maybe not even like, let's go back to this Neanderthaler. Let's go back to my predecessor and see how life was back then.
You can do a test. I've done it a couple of years ago, 23andMe, and then you can see the percentage of Neanderthaler that's still in you.
And how much did you have?
I was, I think, slightly above average Neanderthaler. Okay. Yeah.
But it's
no surprises there.
Yeah, but it's also it has a positive connotation. It's like this for me. It's really this connection to nature and to feeling it in your soul more.
I last summer I was in Italy on holidays, and I read a book about Genghis Khan and the Mongols. And they you see that they actually kind of went back to the nomadic lifestyle. They always were nomadic people, but they had so much advantages because of this that they were the most successful conquerors in the history of humanity. Yeah? Genghis Khan, in one lifetime, he conquered up to Japan, so the entirety of China, and his empire was up to Austria.
Yeah.
In one lifetime, in a time that when it took you like years to cross that empire. And because they were so nomadic and they were so decentralized, they could also set up an entire economical and legal framework across that enormous empire, because they were so used to not working in a central way.
Yep.
So while you were explaining it, that resonated with me, that there could probably be a lot of examples of looking how decentralized nature works and starting to implement it in our current society.
Because it's not working now, so we need to think out of the box. And with that respect, I am also investigating more the blue zones in the world to find out more the reason why, and actually also live it. One of my goals in life is to live in a blue zone for a certain amount of time, and see, okay, what does it bring? How come? And then try to incorporate that also more around it.
All right. I need to keep an eye on the time, but let's do one more of the other questions, and maybe a quick one. What's the best purchase you've done in the last year under 100 euros? Anything that comes to mind?
It's something really stupid. Is actually it's a carton box.
Oh, what?
Just a carton box.
Okay.
Because it has been it has been used to store things in. We used it to move things in, and my son continues to play with it. So it's even under €1, I think. But it just had so many multifunctional, and also so much fun with it. So it's and practical and fun, and you can just fold it and then redo it, and so that was the first thing. I most probably had done maybe better purchases, but that was the first thing that popped in my mind as something very simple. We don't need that much, actually.
No, it's true. And then maybe to close off, any books you would recommend?
Sapiens, of course. And then actually what we do now in the office, we just recently bought books for the entire company. Yeah. For everybody who's already there, we bought the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. A lot of people know. And the growth mindset. Because for us, it's really like you have the growth mindset, and that one is to be productive. And then actually for newcomers, we buy the book of the first 90 days. And that is our palette of like more work focused, I would say. But then there's a more on spiritual level. It is I hope I say it correctly, is the Untethered Soul. it's untethered or
Untethered.
Untethered, yeah. Untethered Soul.
I don't know if I say it right.
Yeah, and it's a brilliant book. So
from who is that?
I need to look that up again. I forgot again.
We will put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
Our editor will put it in.
But definitely that's my best book in the last 5 years.
What's the core message from the Untethered Soul?
It's how to put your ego aside and what happens then.
Mm-hmm.
To live less in your mind, less within your ego, and then all the brilliant things that come after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I've read a lot about the Stoics, where like ego is also the thing you want to cast aside. Like Ryan Holiday's book "Ego is the Enemy" is a great read. Has the same core message, but it's like with a lot of these spiritual books, and I've read a lot of Buddhism and everything. It's you read it and you are so convinced, but if you don't put it into almost a daily set of rituals, it goes away in my experience. And that's probably also why religion throughout the ages was a very daily habitual thing. And that's totally gone away in our secular society. And I do sometimes think maybe we've lost some things because we've cast aside religious conviction so strongly. And again, I get why, especially with everything that's coming out the last couple of years. But the habitual part of it, maybe there was something to it. Because you can know logically ego is the enemy, but how do you do that on a daily basis?
Yeah. What I took away from the book was there can be still a part of the ego, because in daily life we still need a little bit of that ego, but we really need to be aware of it. And I think the strength of reading those kind of books is already understanding. First step is understanding how it works, and then ideally every morning you start with meditating. And you have a guided meditation, and ideally that is what you do every day. I try to meditate, but of course I don't do it every day. But I totally agree with what you say. We have lost that part as well. And how would the world look like if now everybody would meditate every morning?
A love and kindness meditation for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Would be a difference, absolutely.
It would be a different society. But again, there it always starts with yourself. You cannot change the others. You need to start with yourself, and then ideally you read those books over and over, and it stays therefore a little bit more in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And do some retreats so that keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you write like these little notes on the door.
Affirmations.
Yeah.
All right, Sunita, I think we've come to the end of the second conversation. I think it was very interesting. I think our audience will also very much appreciate everything that you've explained today. And hopefully we do a third round, maybe a little bit quicker than 2.5 years, because it's all changing very quickly, right?
Yeah.
I would like to thank you very much for your time, and I wish you the best of luck with SuReal, and with keeping the ego on the side.
Thank you. I would say likewise. No, I would also thank you and congratulate you also first of all by doing this podcast, by helping our society understand more, and also with the work that you're doing here. It's very great. So also congratulations.
Thank you. It's very much appreciated. All right. Thank you very much. And we normally have another episode in 4 weeks. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Bao Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe to our channel. If you're interested in Bao Living in our Smart Adaptable Module or SAM, go check out our website, baoliving.com.